The night the doors of the restaurant opened under soft golden lights, nobody in that room knew they were about to witness history. A sharply dressed black woman stepped inside, calm, composed, observant. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She didn't demand attention. But within 5 minutes, the manager pointed at her and told her she didn't belong there. Within 10 minutes, security was being called. And within 15 minutes, the entire staff would lose their jobs. Because the woman they tried to throw out wasn't a customer. She was the owner. Before we begin, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who believes in justice, and subscribe to Black Legacy, because stories like this deserve to be heard. Atlanta had changed over the last decade. New glass buildings rose where brick storefronts once stood. Historic black neighborhoods were being revitalized, rebranded, repackaged, and resold. Upscale restaurants appeared almost overnight, promising culture with a curated aesthetic. But for Alana Brooks, the city was not a trend. It was home. She grew up on the west side of Atlanta, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts at a diner owned by someone who barely knew her name. Alana remembered sitting in a booth after school, doing homework while her mother refilled coffee for customers who never made eye contact. She remembered something else, too, the way management would speak differently to certain customers, the way assumptions were made before introductions, the way her mother was once accused of stealing tips because a regular insisted people like her couldn't be trusted. That moment stayed with Alana, not because her mother cried, but because she didn't. She kept working. She kept her dignity. And she told her daughter one thing that night. One day, we won't just sit at the table. We'll own it. Alana carried that sentence into adulthood. She excelled academically, earned a business degree, then an MBA. She built her career in hospitality consulting, helping struggling restaurants restructure operations and increase profitability. Investors began noticing her. Within 10 years, she had built a respected firm advising boutique restaurant brands across the Southeast. But success didn't erase memory. It sharpened it. She watched as black chefs were used for marketing, but excluded from ownership. She saw minority communities advertised in campaigns, while leadership rooms remained overwhelmingly homogeneous. And so, she decided to do something radical. She would build her own luxury restaurant brand. Not themed, not stereotyped, not reduced to soul food cliches. Elegant, high-end, refined, a place where excellence wasn't explained. It was assumed. She named it Lumiere, a French word meaning light. The flagship location would open in a renovated historic building in Midtown Atlanta. The space featured marble floors, custom brass fixtures, and a wine collection curated from small vineyards owned by women and minorities around the world. Investors backed her vision. She maintained majority ownership. But as the opening approached, she made a decision no one expected. She would not introduce herself publicly as the owner. Not at first. She wanted to observe. She wanted to see how her brand functioned when her title wasn't attached to her presence. The general manager she hired, Richard Hale, came highly recommended. 15 years in fine dining, polished resume, strong references, confident demeanor. During interviews, he praised diversity initiatives. He spoke about inclusion. He smiled easily. But Alana had learned something over the years. Inclusion spoken is not inclusion practiced. Opening week arrived. Press coverage was strong. Reservations filled instantly. Influencers flooded social media with curated images of candlelit tables and plated artistry. On the third night of operations, Alana decided to visit unannounced. No entourage, no executive assistant, just a tailored emerald suit, hair neatly styled, a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. She didn't walk in seeking confrontation. She walked in seeking clarity. And what she found would change everything. The hostess stand was busy. Laughter echoed across the dining room. Crystal glasses clinked gently. A jazz trio played softly near the bar. Alana paused just inside the entrance, taking in every detail. The lighting temperature was slightly warmer than she'd specified. The floral arrangement near the entrance was off-center. Small details, but details mattered. She approached the hostess. The young woman smiled briefly, then her expression shifted. almost imperceptibly. Reservation name? Alana calmly gave her own name. The hostess scrolled through the tablet, frowned, and said there was no reservation under that name. That was impossible. Alana had personally ensured a table would always be available under the ownership account. Perhaps a mistake. She smiled politely and asked if the manager could assist. That was when Richard appeared. Tall, crisp vest, confident posture. He didn't recognize her. She introduced herself simply as Alana Brooks. The moment hung in the air. Something changed in his eyes, not recognition, but assessment. He scanned her attire, her posture, her complexion. Then he told her the restaurant was fully booked and suggested she try a more casual establishment nearby. She calmly explained she was associated with ownership and would like to sit at the reserved executive table. Richard's smile thinned. He informed her that ownership was not present that evening. He assured her he would know. The nearby guests began glancing over. The energy shifted. Alana remained composed. She requested access to the back office. Richard refused. He then made a statement that echoed louder than he intended. This restaurant maintains a certain standard and is not open to walk-ins who do not meet it. A silence fell over the immediate area. The words were coded, but unmistakable. Security was subtly signaled. 2 staff members approached. Alana felt a familiar tightening in her chest. Not fear, but recognition. The same energy her mother once endured. The same assumptions wrapped in professionalism. She gave Richard one final opportunity. She asked him to check the corporate registry. He declined. He insisted she leave voluntarily before the situation escalated. And then he pointed toward the door. "You don't belong here." The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. The message carried weight. Several diners stared openly now. Phones began recording discreetly. Richard gestured again. Alana slowly placed her portfolio on the hostess stand, unlatched it, removed a leather-bound document, and laid it flat on the counter. Articles of incorporation, majority shareholder documentation, her signature, her name, owner. The color drained from Richard's face. He didn't move, didn't speak. Security froze. The hostess stepped back. The room felt suspended in time. Alana picked up the restaurant internal operations phone from behind the stand, something only ownership knew existed, and dialed the investor liaison. Within minutes, confirmation arrived. Richard's authority evaporated in real time. Guests whispered. Staff exchanged nervous glances. But Alana wasn't finished, because this wasn't about embarrassment. It was about exposure. She asked for employee files, hiring records, diversity reports. Within 20 minutes, inconsistencies emerged. Qualified minority applicants had been rejected. Scheduling favored certain employees disproportionately. Complaints from kitchen staff had been dismissed. The pattern was no longer subtle. It was systemic, and it was happening inside a restaurant built on the promise of representation. The betrayal cut deeper than the insult, because Richard hadn't just disrespected her. He had undermined her mission. Alana stood in the center of the dining room. Every table was watching now. Richard attempted to apologize. He blamed miscommunication. He blamed pressure. He blamed assumptions. But accountability doesn't bend under pressure. It reveals itself. Alana requested all staff assemble immediately, in front of guests, in front of witnesses, in front of truth. One by one, servers, hosts, bartenders, and supervisors gathered. Some confused, some aware, some silently complicit. She addressed them calmly, not with anger, but with clarity. She explained what Lumiere represented: opportunity, ownership, dignity. She explained the complaints she had reviewed, the hiring disparities, the coded language, the pattern of exclusion. Then she made her decision. Effective immediately, Richard Hale was terminated. Gasps rippled through the room. But she continued. All supervisory staff involved in discriminatory hiring practices were dismissed. HR personnel who failed to report patterns were dismissed. The security lead who escalated without verification was dismissed. Nearly the entire leadership team. Gone. Right there, in that moment. Not out of revenge, but because culture cannot be rebranded. It must be rebuilt. Guests began applauding, not because jobs were lost, but because accountability was visible, real, unavoidable. Alana turned to the remaining hourly staff. She assured them their positions were secure pending investigation. She promised retraining, transparency, equity audits conducted by an external firm, and then she did something no one expected. She invited several guests, including those who had recorded the incident, to remain for a private conversation about how the experience made them feel, because impact matters more than image. Richard stood frozen, reputation dissolving by the second. Within hours, the story began spreading online. Clips surfaced, headlines formed, but Alana didn't speak to press immediately. She focused on rebuilding internally first, because leadership isn't about public applause. It's about private responsibility. The weeks that followed were transformative. An independent audit confirmed discriminatory practices. Former rejected applicants were contacted and re-interviewed. Community leaders were invited to consult on policy creation. Lumiere temporarily closed for restructuring. Some critics claimed the response was extreme. Others called it performative. But those who understood systemic bias knew something different. Change feels extreme to those comfortable with imbalance. When Lumiere reopened, the staff looked different, more reflective of the city it served, more diverse in leadership, more intentional in training. A plaque was installed discreetly near the entrance. It read, "Ownership is not a title. It is responsibility." Alana never publicly shamed Richard. She never pursued personal vengeance, because the point was never humiliation. It was correction. Months later, revenue exceeded projections, not because of controversy, but because integrity attracts loyalty. And somewhere in a quiet diner crosstown, her mother watched a news feature about Lumiere's reopening. She didn't cry. She smiled, because the promise she made years ago had come true. They didn't just sit at the table. They owned it, and that night in Atlanta became more than a viral moment. It became a reminder that discrimination doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it wears a vest and speaks politely. But it can be confronted. It can be dismantled. And it can be replaced with something better. If this story moved you, if you believe accountability matters, if you believe ownership means standing for something bigger than profit, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment your thoughts below. And subscribe to Black Legacy, where stories of justice, truth, and resilience continue to shine light where it's needed most.